2 decades, Gerald Edward Levert was widely regarded as a charismatic performer and the last of the great soul singers. He was also an accomplished songwriter. It was probably inevitable, though, since he was born into showbiz royalty. His father, Eddie Levert, is the lead singer of the legendary R&B group, the O'Jays. Gerald, along with his 3 other siblings, grew up in the upscale Cleveland suburb of Shaker Heights. Their huge house easily provided more than enough space and tools for him to pursue his musical aspirations. He listened not only to his father's group, but also to The Temptations, Marvin Gaye, and Gladys Knight and the Pips. And not just on record or on the radio. Eddie often took his son on tour with him during the summer months, and the youngster observed his father and other performers at close quarters. I learned from that experience. It taught me about performing, about timing, about just being able to capture a crowd's attention. I wanted to be a professional, and I wanted to be around for a while. Even though several family members have said that Gerald's father would rather have had his children go to college instead of going into the music industry, Eddie was constantly bringing home various instruments, one of which was a piano. Gerald did begin taking lessons, but hated it. His friend, though, Mark Gordon, was exceptionally talented on the keys and found himself always over at the Levert home working on music with Gerald. Gerald's younger brother Sean was musically inclined as well and was happy to join the other two. By 1983, the teenagers had formed an official group called Levert, with Mark on keyboards, Sean on drums, and Gerald on vocals. They worked diligently on their craft, but every time they took a song to Eddie for feedback, he told them it wasn't it. He wasn't about to let his sons ride his coattails so easily. As time went on, Gerald's writing got better and better. Finally, one day, his father invited the group into the studio to lay down some tracks. Then, while the group continued to hone their skills on stage every chance they got, Eddie shot their demo around. Since Gerald sounded so much like his father, it was proving to be a difficult sell. So Eddie decided to reach out to a friend of his, veteran Philadelphia International Records executive, Harry Coombs. Eddie played the demo for him, and Harry immediately became quite confused. He was sure he was listening to a recording by the O'Jays, not the offspring of their lead singer. That moment was all the convincing Harry needed, so together with Eddie, they created their own label, Temporary, to get Levert out to the masses. The group's debut album, I Get Hot, was released in 1985. It includes their debut single, I'm Still. It didn't do well on the charts, but no doubt was able to get the attention it did due to Gerald's father pleading with radio stations around the country to play it. Then, one night, the head of Atlantic Records' Black Music Division caught their act. He was blown away and knew he had to sign them. The group's first effort for the label, 1986's Bloodline, would give them their first #1 R&B hit with Pop 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 Goes My Mind. Goes my mind. The album climbed all the way to number 8 on the top R&B hip-hop albums chart. To keep the momentum going, Levert quickly went back into the studio to work on their next album, The Big Throwdown. It dropped the very next year. Gerald, Sean, and Mark would experience even more success with it, with all 3 singles making it into the top 5 on the R&B chart. The lead track, Casanova, would also give them another #1 on the R&B chart, as well as their first placement on the Billboard Hot 100, coming in at number 5. It was even nominated for a Grammy for Best R&B Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal. Oh, Casanova! Over the next decade, the hits just kept on coming. Levert released 4 additional albums and achieved 8 more top 10 R&B hits, 3 of which went to #1. 4 albums in total went gold. Fun fact, nicknamed G-Bear by legions of female fans who adored his smooth baritone voice, Gerald would often throw teddy bears drenched in his sweat to the audience. Gerald and Mark went on to form their own production company and began writing and producing for other artists such as Barry White, Anita Baker, and James Ingram. In the midst of his work with Levert, Gerald stepped away for a minute in 1988 to release a track with his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Miki Howard, a duet called That's What Love Is. It became a top 5 R&B ballad. The couple had begun dating a few years prior. In Gerald's 2012 Unsung episode, Miki said that he was the kindest, warmest, and funniest person. However, their idea of what the future held wasn't the same. According to Miki, Gerald wasn't keen on walking into a ready-made family, as she had 2 children. She also said that he wanted a traditional Jehovah's Witness wife that stayed home and tended to the children like his mother. As his unsung episode highlighted though, Gerald had quite a few women around him to choose from. He eventually went on to father 3 children by 3 different women, 2 of whom are only 3 days apart. As the 80s gave way to the 90s, Gerald knew it was time to explore other ideas he had that he couldn't make come to fruition within the confines of the group. He released his solo debut album, Private Line, in 1991. Both the album and the title track went to #1 on the R&B charts. He, along with his father, also topped the same chart with another track off the album called Baby Hold On To Me. Not surprisingly, Gerald's solo success made it that much harder to come back to Levert. The group did put out 2 more albums in 1993 and 1997, but the magic was gone. Another thing Gerald's success did was make those around him feel very comfortable asking for money. He began taking care of not only family, but friends as well. As time pressed on, and as it always does, the music industry changed. R&B had faded into the background, and hip-hop was front and center. So Gerald figured the timing was perfect to move on to another project. He, along with fellow R&B crooners Keith Sweat and Johnny Gill, formed the supergroup LSG. The trio released the album Levert Sweat Gill in 1997 and scored a #1 R&B, top 5 pop hit with the lead single, My Body. Unfortunately, they couldn't get their schedules on one accord, so after their second effort, 2003's LSG2, they parted ways. Fun fact, also around this time, Gerald engaged in a relationship with Xscape member Kandi Burruss. Gerald continued releasing solo albums regularly throughout the 90s and into the early 2000s. Several went gold and platinum, but as far as he was concerned, that wasn't enough, as he still struggled with crossover appeal. When album sales did dwindle, he toured to pay the bills, but after a while, even those money streams dried up. So it would make sense if he decided to pull back on helping others, right? Well, Gerald didn't do that. Instead, he stepped up his grind more, forever on a quest to find his next great hit. The crazy pace soon took a toll. In 2005, while attending a fitness and weight loss program, Gerald fell during a volleyball game and ruptured his Achilles tendon. He was placed in a full-length leg cast and endured a slow, painful recovery. But before he could fully recover, he was back on the road again. He did have to do something about the immobility and discomfort he was in, so he turned to prescription pain medication. The bills weren't going to pay themselves, so he felt he had to get back out there to take care of his responsibilities. On November 10, 2006, several days after returning to the US from a trip to South Africa, where he became ill from an insect bite, Gerald was found dead in his bed at his home in Cleveland, Ohio. He was 40 years old. Initial reports stated that he died of an apparent heart attack, but the autopsy report later revealed that his death was caused by a fatal combination of prescription narcotics and over-the-counter drugs. The drugs in his bloodstream included Vicodin, Percocet, and Darvocet, along with Xanax and 2 over-the-counter antihistamines. The autopsy also revealed that Gerald had pneumonia. The official cause of death was acute intoxication, and the death was ruled accidental. Atlantic Records released the following statement about the tragedy. He was one of the greatest voices of our time, who sang with unmatched soulfulness and power, as well as a tremendously gifted composer and an accomplished producer. Above all, he was an exceptional human being whose warmth and grace inspired us all. Many months after Gerald's passing, his family was still at odds over his estate. He left behind at least $2 million worth of assets, including 2 homes, 2 luxury cars, jewelry, clothing, furniture, securities, and bank accounts. His publishing copyrights and music royalties had yet to be appraised and was reported to make up a sizable part of his estate, according to court records. The process of divvying up the estate resulted in a legal battle between his cousin, the executor of the estate, and 2 women who had children with Gerald. The women claim that Gerald's cousin had left them in the dark throughout the process. They say they want to ensure the children receive their due as the singer's legal next of kin. A 3rd child is also set to inherit from the estate. Shortly before his death, Gerald completed work on what would be his final album, In My Songs. It was released in early 2007. In June, a book he was working to complete titled I Got Your Back, A Father and Son Keep It Real About Love, Fatherhood, Family, and Friendship was released. It explores their father-son relationship, the necessity of male bonding, and the importance of repairing fractured families. At the 50th Annual Grammy Awards in 2008, Gerald, along with Chaka Khan, Yolanda Adams, and Carl Thomas, were nominated for a Grammy in the category of Best R&B Performance by a duo or group with vocals for their collaboration on Everyday Family Reunion, a song from the soundtrack of Tyler Perry's Medea's Family Reunion. He was nominated again for Best Traditional R&B Vocal Performance for the title track from his final album, In My Songs. Gerald won the latter. His brother and former founding Levert member Sean accepted on his late brother's behalf. In the summer of 2013, in his hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, Gerald was inducted into the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame, along with the O'Jays.